The year was 1400 BC. There was a newly appointed general who was succeeding a leader who had passed away. He led a nation who was standing on the edge of what was behind them, and that was a series of trials and tribulations, as well as some incredible promise and some good things. But they stood on the edge of what was in front of them. They faced a river that was at flood stage. They faced a land that was in front of them that was incredibly beautiful, fertile, and that had been promised to them, and that was the prize in front of them. This leader had never been a point leader before, and yet he was faced with this leadership task. What would he do? What would he say to the people to inspire them? What would he do as they would be led on to conquer 31 kingdoms that have been in warfare with each other since the ancient times? 31 well-fortified cities, 31 kings, 31 professionally fortified armies. What would he say to allow these people to have a vision for what they were doing? Welcome to episode 28 of the Next Stage podcast. I'm your host, Rob Stout, and the reason that we're here is to help you achieve your God-given potential in life, to help you reach to your God-given potential in life, to be a man who is somebody who isn't just in the race, but winning the race, isn't just climbing the mountain, but hitting its summit. We're so excited about this series that we're in. It's called What Really Matters. And the reason that we're doing this is, number one, your life matters. And number two, the way you live it matters because you only get one shot. So that's the urgency that we're talking about. And I'm excited. The first couple of these episodes, I'm going to tee up for us. And then we're going to jump into interviews with some men that I love, that I trust, that are in my inner circle. And we're going to dig into some topics around what really matters. But today's topic, what really matters, it's time for some hard truth to speak into soft manhood. It's time to talk about some grit, determination, resolve, what really matters in your life as a man. And so let's dig in. There's a problem in masculinity today. There's a problem with the way that we function as men. There is a crisis in manhood, and it has produced a soft manhood. I'm going to give you 4 descriptions of the crisis. The first is a crisis of the will. It's the mental aspect of your game. Internally, you typically don't know where you're heading in life. Many men do not. If you fit this, great, lean in. If not, catch us on the next crisis because one of these will hit you. But you have not made up your mind where you're heading. If somebody asks, what do you do? You know, what's your career? Where are you heading in life? Where's your career path going and that type of stuff? You would probably start to rattle off the various things in your life. For example, you know, I've got a job, I work out, I do this, I golf, I got a family or not. I've got a wife or an ex-wife or a wannabe wife or a wife I'm trying to get rid of or whatever your relationship issue is. But you would probably start rattling the things that you do, not the thing you are, your mission and purpose in life. As a consequence, there's an external crisis of the will as well. You are trapped inside of a cultural bubble, no matter where you live. It's a bubble that has a media culture to it. It has music culture to it. It has messaging that you get, and one of those messages that you get is a message that says past performances predict future results. So you can look at your past and go, hey, I messed things up there, and so I may not succeed here. That's an external challenge of your will. The crisis number 2 is a crisis of courage. A crisis in manhood today is an internal crisis of courage. You look at opposing forces around you, and it could be the economy, it could be your education, it could be the competition at work, it could be in the marketplace, it could be a political situation, other people, pressures. It could be the hot topic these days of immigration and deporting so many people and cleaning up our borders and that type of thing. And you are paralyzed on what to say, how to say it. Is it compassionate enough? How do we support a president? How do we oppose a president? All of that. And you have a crisis of courage in this area. That's the internal crisis. When to step up, when not to. And so typically many men get frozen in self-doubt. What to say? Are they going to be canceled if they say something? Then it is a crisis of courage. Externally, many of us have been taught that we need to be nice guys. We need to be men who are nice, who are polite, who don't cause a stir. And so we have sacrificed territory in our life and our belief system, and being able to wrap our minds around a topic and being able to step into a dangerous place because we have a crisis of courage. The third crisis that men face today that create a soft masculinity is the crisis of stamina. You face opposition in your life, and yet you find that you have no backbone to stiffen and to fight. Maybe you wilt when you're called upon to show grit in your life. My wife is a second grade teacher, and I frequently talk about her, but all of the teachers, regardless of where they're at on the political or spiritual or age spectrum, talk about the fact that these kids have no grit. Somehow, a generation of softies has produced a generation of just marshmallow kids. They have no stamina. They have no grit. And so they don't know how to put in a hard day's work. College graduates who show up in her classroom as student teachers, they're about to graduate, but they've been through 18 years of schooling, another 4 years at some of the finest universities that the nation would offer. Come to her classroom as student teachers. They have no grit, no ability to rise up, no ability to receive critical feedback. It is true with men as well. Men who do not know how to put in a hard day's work have no stamina, very thin skin, and if they have a mask on, it's typically false bravado, but there's really nothing at the core. Externally, that's the internal challenge. Externally, we've heard about toxic manhood, right? And so we hear that men are oppressive to women, minorities, everybody else, and that men are the problem. Are men the problem? Sometimes we are. All the time? No. It's like there has been a design that has taken the lion inside of you and made it a kitten. There's been a design that, as far as this issue of stamina, that you, instead of being a lion, have been made a sheep. That's the third crisis in manhood that produces a soft manhood. The fourth crisis is a crisis of faith. That you don't possess a passion in your soul, a strong conviction in your gut to move forward in the face of the unknown. Men who are not of faith, okay? Let me address you for a second. We want men of all persuasions to lean into this show, to gain interest, to have something piqued in them. But if you're a man not of faith, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe there's something in you that just causes some insecurity. You're not anchored in a strong belief. You kind of find yourself wavering and kind of just tossed about in the sea of belief, and you don't really know where you're at, and you don't really understand your faith system, and so I understand that. But to men of faith, let me say this. What is the problem? Like you say, I believe in God. I have a strong faith in God. You put Romans 8:28 on the eye black that all the college players are wearing, writing scripture verses on there, which I think is a fantastic thing. We're going to talk about that later. But you say God dwells in you. God is on your side. But when it comes down to it, you don't have what it takes to lean in to the wind, to allow the waves of life to hit you, to come into your boat, and you wilt and you get discouraged. And the testing of your faith does not produce perseverance, it produces quitting. On top of that crisis of faith, there is an external challenge to that. That we hear that our media speaks about faith and people of faith as if they're just stupid. They don't believe in science. They're foolish. They're archaic. That they're misogynistic, homophobic, xenophobic, and all kinds of other icks. But in reality, we allow that to hit our lives and we allow that to wilt our faith. So it's those 4 challenges that I see that are the problem in manhood today. There are many more, but we're just going to focus on those. 1 is a crisis of will. The 2nd is the crisis of courage. The 3rd is the crisis of stamina. The 4th is the crisis of faith. And what it has produced is a soft generation. If this shoe fits, wear it. Allow it to challenge you. I allow it to challenge myself. I invite it to challenge you. Are you a soft man who struggles with having a backbone? One of the things I love about the fall and winter is college football. I'm a college football fanatic from the great state of Ohio. People ask me what my favorite pro team is in Ohio, the Bengals in Cincinnati or the Browns in Cleveland. I said, no. None of those. It's our 3rd professional team, the Buckeyes. Now, listen, before you hit pause, throw your phone out the window, whatever it is, or want to bring your college team to me, that's fine. We all have teams to root for. I can't help it if you're wrong. Anyway, one of the cool things that has happened this year is that these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old men have made such a strong statement with their faith. It's been amazing. I know a man who works at Ohio State. His name's Tom Rohde. He works with a group called Cross Sports. Shout out to Tom if you listen to this podcast. But he has told me for years what they're doing on that team. And it is amazing that team and others across the country, we'll get to that in just a second, those young men have come out on campus and have made statements about their faith. And they held a rally at Ohio State where they took some of the tubs from the therapy room, the cold tubs, brought them out to the middle of campus, had a worship service, shared their faith, and were baptizing people in the middle of the campus at Ohio State. Not just players, not just at Ohio State, although I want to say, go Buckeyes, especially after winning the national championship. But I've seen coaches on the sidelines with shirts saying Jesus won on them. The statement that was made at the national championship game, even with Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, very outspoken believer, scores the first touchdown of the game, points to his wristband, had a verse in Proverbs written on there. Even in defeat, that guy sat in front of a microphone in front of the press with tears in his eyes and said, I want to honor Jesus Christ in my life. Even in this defeat, this hurts, this doesn't make sense, but I want to give him honor. It has been so cool to see even that guy, after a 13-game winning streak, losing his 14th game, to players, to coaches, to administrators, and even to the guys at ESPN. After the game, sitting and talking about the game, not just talking about the football, but about the faith. It's amazing to see. ESPN, owned by Disney, not exactly a conservative Christian outlet, right? But I want to say, way to go. And so I bought one of these shirts. The players at Ohio State made these shirts, and the shirt said, Jesus won. Jesus won. And it had their logo. Oh, in fact, I've got one just hidden right here. Those of you who are on YouTube, you can take a look. Ladies, don't get all excited at all if you're watching in. Those of you who are not, listen on Spotify or on Apple, one of our other outlets, Jesus won was the t-shirt. Had a Big Ten logo on it, had a Nike swoosh on it, has the Ohio State logo on the back. man, I thought I'm just going to jump on this bandwagon with these players. Guess how many times I wore this t-shirt? Once to my church to show my pastor because I thought it was super cool. Once during a game that I was watching inside my house. And once, not in my neighborhood, not at the supermarket, which is right around the corner, but once when I was in Florida watching my nephew's lacrosse game, and a kid yells, "Hey, man, nice shirt." I turned around and showed him the Ohio State logo, and he made a particular, said hello and told me I was awesome with his finger. I'm not sure what he was trying to say. I think he was saying I was number one, Mike, or something like that. Isn't that the Boston greeting when you say hello to somebody? Yeah.
Read between the lines.
Read between the lines. So anyway, we talked about that a little bit. But the reality is I didn't go all out. I just kind of jumped on the bandwagon. But how outspoken am I with the things that I believe? How do you face internal and external crisis that you face every day? How do you lean into the hard truth of your life? How do you face these challenges, including challenges of faith, where you might be challenged with what you believe, where you may be in a culture that is not so receptive to that type of thing? How do you stand up? Let's go back to our story in 1400 BC. In case you didn't figure it out, the general's name was Joshua, whose name means Yahweh is our salvation. The people were the nation of Israel. The river that they stood in front of was the Jordan River. It was on the east side of the country, and they were crossing over to take over a land that God had promised them. It was the land of Canaan. The armies that were there, the kingdoms that were there were 31 kingdoms that they needed to conquer. And the words that rang out across the plain that day were the words that would go down in history, which means have audacious certainty of success. Be strong and courageous. The Hebrew words are rak, kazak, amatz. Rak, kazat, amatz. That was the word that Joshua had for the nation of Israel. And it's a great phrase. I love the way that Eric Luddy explains this. I'm just going to quote him here. Rock. It means only do what follows. It is a plead of emphasis. Rock. Kazak. Kazak means be strong. Have the rock-like umph of a spiritually zealous heart. The game face of a mighty man, tenacious of soul. The gritting of the heart that is inspiring the spiritual warrior. And the breathing of those, or the baring of those teeth to the enemy. A resolute and growling resolve for the glory of God. A flush and fervent spirit. A tensing of the warrior's muscles. That's what Kazak means. It means a resolute, not giving up strength, followed by the word amatz. It means take courage, make secure, be obstinate. But more than that, it means have the heavenly audacity. Rushing headlong into the most ferocious and dangerous and impossible battles without pausing to even consider the impossibilities. It's confidence and victory even before the field is taken. It is faith. Rak, kazat, amatz. Rak, kazak, amatz. The phrase is a reminder of being tenacious and zealous and having that fortitude to be able to go for it in life in the face of crisis. The idea that I want you to hang on to, men, is this. The hard truth is that we live in a soft generation that is waiting for you and for me to rock, kazak, amatz, to be strong and courageous, to have that sense of fortitude. There will be opposition, make no doubt about it. the armies that were in that area, the kings that were there, the 31 smaller empires that needed to be conquered, they didn't just lay down and be like, oh, come on in. Yeah, we're out. We're done. Check it out. No. There was a wave of fear that was sent across that because of the Hebrew God that was with the Hebrew people. But they didn't just lay down. The nation had to be strong and courageous. They were opposed with their will, their courage, their stamina, and their faith. And believe me, you will be too. You absolutely will be as you work to live out in a soft generation, rock, kazakh, amats. The classic story of another display of this was David as he faced Goliath. It's the story of a young shepherd boy who was tried to talk out of going to battle. All the adults, all the grown-up, all the professional warriors were sitting on the sideline, and this guy came up to deliver lunch to his brothers, sees this giant who is opposing them, who is mocking their God. He had the will, he had the courage, he had the stamina, he had the faith to rush into the battle. He had a zealous heart. He had the game face of a mighty man. He had tenacity of the soul. He had a resolute and a resolved heart to run into it. He had the heavenly tenacity to run to the battle, not even thinking about the impossibilities, but only that which would be achieved as he went for it. Rock, Kazakh, Amats, strong and courageous. And years later, David is a wonderful name to name a son. It's a great name. It's strong. Goliath, it's a great name to name your dog, I think. Maybe a big dog at that. But we don't celebrate Goliath. We celebrate David because this courageous act led him to be king of a nation, led him to be a man after God's own heart, led him to expand this nation years after Joshua and the nation and the armies took the land. But the challenge is a challenge of the will. Man, the challenge of the will is, may you be like Joshua, who on that same plain told the people, rock, kazakh, amats. But he also said, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The people had to make a choice, and so do you, to face the challenge of the will in a soft generation. Will you be a man who makes up his mind, who sets his destiny, who sets his will and says, I'm heading there no matter who follows? Will you be a man? The second call to action is a challenge of courage, to be courageous when the waves of life are hitting your boat, to be the one who will walk into the dark space. And that may be into the external place of having to conquer something at work, maybe having to fight a battle in your community for good, maybe having to take a stand on this issue of immigration and where you're going to be. And I know that there are pastors and leaders out there who are wrestling with this. My wife, a teacher, again, they got a letter. This is how kids might be dealing with this. This is what we're going to do as a school and what we do if we're confronted with this. These are very, very real issues. What will you need to do? Or internally. Maybe not it's an external battle, but your battle of courage is one of tackling an addiction. It is one of needing to put a plan in place for your life. Maybe it's putting a plan in place to take on that anxiety or that depression issue. Do it. Go for it. Lean into it. Don't quit. Because that leads us right into the next call to action, the challenge of stamina. Anyone can get fired up from listening to an inspirational, motivational podcast, and I hope you do. I hope it leads you, though, to have a great day that day. But what things of stamina will you continue for 30, for 90, for 180 days, for 365 days, and then the next year, and the next year, and the next year, as you put together a life, not just an event? And if you are a dad, what are you doing to develop stamina in your kids so that you don't have a little marshmallow son or daughter who's laying around, who doesn't know how to work, who doesn't have a grit, any tenacity, who just kind of wilts under the pressure of life? What are you doing? Whatever it is, I ask that you would develop that in your kids, because the world's going to need them. But for you, put your mind to it. Put your will to it. Put your courage to it. Put your stamina to it. And don't quit. Finally, it's the challenge of faith. Put your actions where your words are. Don't just talk about it. Do it. Step into it. If you need help in finding faith, I would love nothing more than to help you walk into that, probably from an angle that's very personal to you and your journey. It's not just a postage stamp, here's what you need to do to know God. No, if God is out there, he has related to you and will relate to you in a way that relates to your life. Email me the next stage at Sherpa5280.com. Finally, there is a challenge in all of this, and it's a challenge of community. Men, you cannot do it alone. I mentioned we just got back from Uganda doing our With Everything Men's Weekend at Musana. Check them out at musana.org. Free shout out to those guys. But we are doing a 6-week follow-up program with those men to be able to get them together. Why? We were talking to the leaders because logs in a fire burn brightest together. They burn hot. They burn long. They burn and create heat and supply what they need to supply. Logs that are spread out, that maybe were once on fire, but spread out and isolated, they don't last long at all. So there is a challenge of community. I would ask you to get some other men around you. You can do it. You can listen to this podcast. You can talk about it. You can battle over it. You can disagree with it. You can do something as easy as getting together, reading a portion of scripture, and talking about it together. If you need help in that area, reach out to me. Again, the next stage at Sherpa5280.com. I would love to help. The hard truth, men, is that we live in a soft generation. Many of us are soft ourselves, but the world is waiting on us to be strong and courageous. Rock, Kazakh, Amats. Say it with me. Rock, Kazakh, Amats. May you be men of strength and courage. May you be men who choose this day who you will serve. May you be men with that intestinal fortitude, that fire in the belly, that will and that courage to be the man you need to be in your world. And that's what really matters. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Next Stage. It is a pure joy to be able to share with you. This has been episode 28. I'm your host, Rob Stout, and episodes come out every 2 weeks. So please remember to like, to share, to subscribe to the channels, either Apple or Spotify or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, click the bell and it'll remind you automatically that a brand new episode is out. And if you would, give us a 5-star rating. It helps the algorithm spread what we're doing, and we would love nothing more than to impact more men. Also, if you would check out our social media channels, would love that. Send us a message if you want to give us some feedback, the next stage at Sherpa5280.com. But until next time, I want to encourage you. Keep reaching to achieve the God-given potential that you've been given, and may you be a man of rock, Kazakh, Amats. Thank you for joining. We'll talk to you next time.